Chapter 11. From Out the Past. Elsewhere I have stated that mental poise and physical health are experienced through harmonious, rhythmic vibration, such vibration being the result of harmonious thought and feeling. The right adjustment of the mind to one's inner or spiritual feelings will, in turn, bring about a harmonious adjustment to one's environment. Moreover, with such a state of heart and mind, true rhythmic vibration will be established, and music could be made one means of forming and keeping this the normal state, and not a passing or a transitory condition. Right habits might be so firmly established that it would be easier for one to continue in such a condition than to break away from it. Remember, I do not make music the cure, but the means to an end. The curative power is undoubtedly latent or potential in man's spiritual consciousness, and music may be made the means of awakening this consciousness. I would not have anyone suppose for a minute that this curative power in the life of man is only to be found in the higher spiritual consciousness. On every plane of man's development, from the lowest elemental plane to the highest spiritual one, about which we know little at the present time, there is a degree of this higher consciousness quite sufficient for the needs of the particular plane to which a man may have unfolded, and music may be used to call out this higher consciousness. Each plane of development would have its corresponding plane or degree of music. On every plane of being in the development of the life of man, there is a lawful, orderly sequence from the initial movement to the ultimate development of the plane. Law and order enter as fully into the life of man as they do into anything else in the universe. Power is not given to one and withheld from another, but it is given to all men according to their needs and requirements. The needs of one living on the purely elemental or physical plane of being are only in a limited way the same as those of one living on a higher plane. It will be found that they are not the same in degree because the physical or elemental plane is limited to the needs and requirements of that particular plane. With the greater development comes the greater need. Each plane has its own particular needs, and when man rises from a lower plane to a higher one, he becomes dead, as it were, to the lower and alive to the higher. So it would not be possible for him to continue to supply his needs solely through the use of former things. It should be fully recognized then that what is good on one plane in human development not only is no longer necessary, but might really prove harmful if continued on a higher plane. Furthermore, let it be known that there is everything in the way of supply necessary for anyone's needs on any one or all planes of life. Therefore, music can be said to be an agent for the restoration of health on any plane. Music is equally effectual on all planes, only it would require good judgment and wise discrimination in selecting the kind of music to meet all the needs of those to whom it might be given. All the way from the sense to the spiritual plane, we may have music varying in degree but not necessarily in kind, which appeals to the best in man's nature. The simple music in the undeveloped life has its determining influence in the building of character, just as much as the music of a higher order upon the more developed life. A man who listens to music which awakens only superficial emotions is sowing the seed of something which in the future time will not only have to be overcome, but will be the cause of misery to him until it is overcome. Why should one consciously store up in the subconscious mind certain kinds of possessions which in the end will only be destructive, bringing in their train not only sorrow but disease? We should make the subconscious mind the storehouse for all the real riches of life, so that at will we may be able to draw upon them. Elsewhere, I have said that the subconscious mind is the repository of all that we have ever felt, thought, or done, and daily we are living over again what we have already lived. There is a law of association of ideas by which when anyone consciously thinks anything, such conscious thinking acts instantly to call up things from the subconscious that are similar or in some way related to the thing thought. If it should prove that the person was thinking of something that brightened or uplifted his mind, then such a thought would be reinforced or strengthened by kindred thoughts arising from the subconscious. But if the conscious thoughts were of a morbid or gloomy nature, the subconscious would add to them still other morbid or gloomy thoughts. The subconscious mind is our book of life, and we are constantly going back and reading its pages or chapters. If we could realize the truth of what we are doing, we would pay far greater attention to writing into this book the things that we would enjoy reading over again. We should try to avoid writing into it things of an unwholesome or of a disagreeable nature. We cannot get away from the fact that all our conscious action is simply the beginning of something which later must be lived and relived, whether we wish it or not. Perhaps we all have had the experience of listening to a certain piece of music under very happy or delightful conditions, and whenever we have heard the same music again, we have been able to recall and experience something of the happiness that we had when we first heard it. Or again, under sorrowful or depressing circumstances, we may have heard music that, whenever we hear it ever after, calls up from the subconscious the sorrow and depression of the past. Subconsciousness may even go back into a remote past that one may have lived in another life. It is my firm belief that our subconscious minds contain all the melody and rhythm of all the music of the past, so that whenever music is made to appeal to any phase of life that existed in the past, there is recalled by it some of those distant events that one has already lived. Here are a number of illustrations to show how children, as well as adults, respond both in mind and body to music, and how music calls out much that may have been impressed upon their minds in a remote past. I remember on one occasion, when a number of people were gathered together to listen to someone playing on a violin, that a little child about 2 years old was present, who had never seen anyone dance and had never before heard the violin played. When the violinist had played a minute or two, the child began to dance and exhibited a wonderful degree of rhythm in the dancing, keeping splendid time with the music, and her whole countenance was transfigured with happiness. I am fully convinced that the music of the violin awakened long-forgotten memories in the mind of the child, and that the pleasure, the dance, and the rhythm were all expressions of something that had been felt and lived before. Again, I remember being at an opera one night where a little child, apparently not more than 18 months old, or at the most 2 years, kept time with both her hands all through the opera. On several occasions, the father and the mother tried to keep her still, but she persisted in beating time, which she did with a correctness that could not have been excelled by many people who had studied music for years. Some time ago, a former professor of the Royal Academy of Music in London related to me the following story, having personal knowledge of and vouching for the truth of it. A child between 6 and 7 years old who had lived in the country and had never seen or heard a piano was taken by her mother to visit some friends. Shortly after she arrived, there were quite a number of people in the drawing room, and one of them went to the piano and played a piece of music on it. When it was finished, the child said, "Mother, I can do that," and some other member of the party, hearing her say it, told her mother to let her try. She went to the piano and, standing before it, used the fingers of both hands and played the piece with very few mistakes. I do not believe that we ever do anything without first having worked for it, and I cannot believe but that the child must have had previous instruction before being able to do what she did. But that instruction had not been received during the few years she had lived in this life. The following story I can personally vouch for, as I have known the lady who told it to me for years, and have absolute faith in her reliability. She says, "A few years ago, when I was staying in Paris, some Russians who were in the same hotel met some Russian students at the Sorbonne. One day they came to the house, and all the young people assembled in a large room in order to have a pleasant time together. In the course of the afternoon, a young Russian danced an intricate Caucasian dance. It represented the life story of a young peasant girl and began quite slowly, the steps getting faster and faster until the girl drops dead in the midst of a frenzy of feeling and despair. At the end of it, I felt impelled to get up, and I repeated the whole dance right through with one of the Russians playing the music. It caused a great deal of astonishment and met with much applause. During the whole performance, I was lost in the enjoyment of the dance, and it was only afterward that I realized what had happened. This was the more remarkable as I am of a very reserved disposition and had never done anything spontaneously before a number of strangers till that time. Again, not being an expert dancer, everyone wanted to know how I remembered the steps, but they just came of their own accord. It is a significant fact that twice during the following days I was asked to repeat the dance and could not do so, as there were so few steps that I could remember. This is the story as given me, word for word, by the lady. There is one thing, however, that she failed to relate, and that is that some of her ancestors were Russians, and, while she herself was born in England of an English father, through the mother's side of the family she gets the Russian, and in her build and features she is apparently much more Russian than English. If the theory of reincarnation is true, it is more than possible that all these cases can be explained on the assumption that the different actors in these incidents had previously lived and done the same things before, and it only required the music to bring that consciousness back again into vital, living existence. I believe that man's subconsciousness contains all the good and all the evil of countless ages, and music may be made to call into consciousness all that is highest and best in his nature, as well as all that is unreal and debasing. Music may be made to strike every chord in man's elemental passion. There is no depth it cannot sound, as there is no height it cannot be made to reach. It may be made to inspire love of country or love of family. It may call out that something which is resident in all, the love of nature or the love of mankind, or the love which a man bears for a woman or a woman for a man. It is well for us to remember that the tares and the wheat grow side by side in the subconsciousness. We have all sown the seed of both, and we all continue to reap the harvest of both. The seed sowing is a continuous process. The reaping is just as continuous. All unconscious of the effect he is producing, man has gone on sowing and reaping, and all that he has ever felt or thought or done is written in his great book of life, the subconscious mind. Supposing that he has written into it unwittingly all the miseries and all the pleasures of earth, now that he is conscious of what he is doing, why should he not begin to write into it in a conscious way all the joys and all the harmonies that come from true knowledge and righteous living? When the realization has come to him that he is one with all the life and all the power of God's universe, that he is a part of the whole, that all nature is filled with melody produced in a rhythmic way, and that he in soul and mind and body is not only one with all nature but with universal life, with the very soul of music itself, then he will begin to sing his new song of life, because he will have awakened to a knowledge of music as it is, music that will be an ever-expanding power for good in his life, the music that comes from the heart, the music which appeals to the mind, and gives health and strength to the body. That being the case, how necessary it becomes to use the subconscious mind as a repository for that which is going to bring forth good fruits. One should cultivate the love of music that is of the highest and best order. In doing this, all the noblest emotions will be aroused in the subconscious mind and will work with the conscious mind to bring, as it were, new riches into life. Very few people stop to think that in following any mistaken course they are only storing up for themselves added troubles. Because trouble is cumulative, it is something that goes on growing, so that the little thing eventually becomes a greater thing. Thus we may add to all kinds of disturbances, while, if we had been able to see things aright from the beginning, we might have saved ourselves much mental worry or sorrow, and perhaps have avoided physical pain and disease. Let me say here that every unreal thought or emotion that we allow to enter the consciousness of the present will return to produce a continued action upon both mind and body. It should be understood that all music that appeals solely to man's superficial emotions and elemental passions produces a heated imagination which acts upon his physical organism to greatly increase its vibration, so that the natural functions of one's body are greatly interfered with, and the excessive actions thus set up will produce all kinds of reactionary effects. Why should anyone destroy his peace of mind or interfere with his own physical well-being? That is exactly what people are doing when they listen to vicious, unreal, emotional music. We know, then, that music may be made to call out not only that which lives in man's subconsciousness from a near or distant past, but that it may be made the means of going deeper than all subconsciousness and calling out that heavenly melody and rhythm that lives in the soul of man as an inheritance from God. All music, whether it be vocal or instrumental, that comes to us from without is only a means to an end. In the first place, it may serve to awaken music that has been dormant in the subconscious mind, and, in so far as it has been joyous, uplifting, or beautiful, it will be of present benefit. It may also be made to appeal to man's higher nature, causing an awakening of a spiritual consciousness, and with such an awakening will come a fuller and a deeper appreciation of music. So no one should ever allow himself to be content with anything that is mediocre in music, for in doing so, he will never be able to reach the highest goal of his desires. He should seek in every way possible for that which is highest and best, whether it be in music or anything else, and he will find that he will get far greater satisfaction through taking such a course than he could possibly do in any lesser way. We can make the subconscious mind a repository for the many thoughts that we shall like to recall to cheer and uplift us when in need. If the living of life is all written into the subconscious, why not learn to write it in the most beautiful way? Why should its pages be blotted by discordant, angry, or disagreeable thinking? Why not record everything in terms of beauty? No one writes our book of life for us. We write it for ourselves, and we put into it that which in a future time we have to read over and over again. Why not write into it our fondest hopes and desires, our most beautiful thoughts and feelings? Why not fill it with the music of true living? We can do it if we will. If we fill the subconscious mind with a longing desire for the things we wish to be and the things we wish to do, then such thoughts and feelings will come up over and over again into the conscious mind to inspire us to renewed action, until all we have hoped for and desired becomes fully realized, and with such realization there will come still grander hopes and desires, and because of what we have been able to do, we shall be able to accomplish still greater and more wonderful things. How much better it is to work in harmony with the divine law and order of life than to put ourselves in opposition to it. And not only better, but more delightful, giving more peace of mind and greater happiness. When we think that all this can be accomplished through our own efforts, and that it brings untold good, it should inspire us to a daily and hourly effort to live life in the one and only way that makes life worth living. Blank misgivings of a creature moving about in worlds not realized, high instincts, before which our mortal nature did tremble like a guilty thing surprised. But for those first affections, those shadowy recollections, which, be they what they may, are yet the fountain light of all our day, are yet a master light of all our seeing. Uphold us, cherish, and have power to make our noisy years seem moments in the being of the eternal silence. Truths that wake, to perish never, which neither listlessness, nor mad endeavor, nor man nor boy, nor all that is at enmity with joy, can utterly abolish or destroy. Hence, in a season of calm, whether though inland far we be, our souls have sight of that immortal sea. We brought no material riches into this world, and we shall take no worldly possessions out of it. But we bring with us, at birth, the whole history of the past. The body recapitulated the many stages and conditions that in bygone ages were being wrought out in form after form, until at last, the body became a fit habitation for the living soul. And the mind, beginning in early childhood, recapitulates all that man has lived and been and done from elemental savagery up to our present stage of human civilization. And at the present moment life is being lived in order to still further enrich the mind. Each experience through which we pass brings some new knowledge to bear upon how life is to be lived. If we use this knowledge in a wise way, we are storing up, we are garnering the only riches, those that we can take with us when we leave this world. The truer and the stronger our thoughts are, the more we shall have of the needed riches to bring about new adjustments to life, no matter on what plane of being we may be. We can make, through the conscious action of the mind, our book of life a real guidebook that will help to show us always the best way to take. We are in the world for the purpose of expanding to the real love and wisdom of life, and through such development to fit ourselves for new and higher planes of life and being. End of chapter.